Okay, so question. Michael Sayer, good or bad for Bitcoin? Good or
Oh,
bad?
Sailor. Well,
Same, same.
just a new addition in a long line of disliking. To me, it's kind of like he's the 2021 version of Roger Ver, of what Roger Ver used to be back in like 2013. That's what he appears like to me. Ultimately, he's just a indication of the space at large, or the kind of values and ideals of the space. I think Matt brought it up. Odell brought it up on Dispatch yesterday. The tweet that Saylor had made, and it's just like his vision of the future of Bitcoin wallets, and it's so absolutely absurd, and so contrary to where we're all coming from that it's just kind of laughable. So I think Saylor is inconsequential. I think the people who are like following him like he's a disciple are more of an issue, but whatever.
So, Bitcoin Jesus version 2.
Well, yeah, maybe version 3 even. I don't know who came after Roger, but these guys are, ultimately they're con men, and this is just a con man with a publicly traded company, and yeah, I don't have any. I don't think he's anything special by any means.
Yeah, I do think I think it's funny when. Well, I guess let me ask. Do you think that people like him or people with that level of a platform and following can be dangerous to Bitcoin as far as long-term capture or manipulation of what Bitcoin is? Or is Bitcoin a honey badger and doesn't care?
Well, it's a little bit of both. I mean, he's not that important, so we don't want to give him too much credit. Like I said, it's the fact that he was absolutely nobody until Bitcoin. Bitcoin made his full profile. His whole profile's in Bitcoin. Before that, he was basically reselling domains, squatting domains and selling them, and selling kind of second-rate business intelligence software. He's a nobody. So I don't think he's the the harbinger of bad things to come. I think it's just the space in general. The fact that this space made this guy the celebrity, or the Bitcoin Jesus 3.0 or whatever is more, it's a wider issue, and it's kind of showing that wider issue. The space is captured, not completely, but it's well on its way. And that's nothing to do with Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor is just here because it is captured. And then that was the whole point of the whole number go up crowd, who wanted to focus on making Bitcoin institutional, more of an institutional asset, more pleasing to the institutional investor of Michael Saylor's type. This is what you're going to get. You're going to get highly regulated entities. You're going to get these actors pushing for broader regulations, so tighter regulations, stronger regulations. We see it in every industry because they can manage. They have the lawyers. They have the power to either handle the regulatory burden or get around the regulatory burden. Whereas startups and just the everyman has no shot in hell of doing it. So it keeps people like us out of the way. But yeah, I don't think he's really a risk or anything. I just think he's kind of a snake oil salesman. I mean, he is running a public company, so as soon as things start to turn and his shareholders kind of say, "Hey, actually, we don't know that we want you to be doing this," he could sell, and his iron hands could become very, very weak. Or he could get kicked out of his own company. There's so many things that could happen with the way the strategy. I think if any of you guys are like into the stock market and stuff like that, like pretend that you didn't, that Michael Saylor had nothing to do with MicroStrategy, if you like stumbled on that stock and you like looked into it, there's no way in hell you would invest in that piece of shit. You know, the only reason anyone invests in that is because of Bitcoin right now. It's and that's not saying anything. There was another ticker that just put blockchain in their name, and they went up like 500%. The market's completely irrational. You can't look at it as some kind of indicator, not the stock market. But on a fundamental level, no, he's not a problem.
Yeah, no, I mean that's really what my point was. It's not him in general; it's more what he represents, right? Like that, that crowd.
Right. The fact that he doesn't get more pushback.
The following, it's crazy. Like the following of, anything to make the bags pump. And then it's like people want to talk shit about, shit coins and all this other stuff and being scams. And not saying Bitcoin's a scam, but like when you're willing to do anything to make the number go up, you're really just a bag holder wanting someone to pump your stuff instead of caring about the tools or caring about the
right. Well, you're there for one reason.
You're supposed to do.
Yeah, you're there to make money. That's what you're there for. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just it's when the vast majority of people are there to just make money, which is what happens in every kind of bull market. You get a big rush of people that come in, and they're there because the price is going. That's been true, even in 2012, 2013, even before, because anyone's attracted to an appreciating asset like that appreciates so rapidly in value. Everyone wants to get involved. It's who gets left behind and the kind of culture that develops around it, and ultimately it's been kind of slowly eroding 2013, 2014, 2015, and then I would say quite rapidly eroding 2017, 18, 19, 20. And it's how quickly things have ramped up in the last couple of years that has surprised me, and how eager the actors in the space have been to roll over for the regulators. And instead of in 2013, no one would build something with the intention of rolling over for a regulator, which is so the antithesis of what we were doing. What we would try to do is figure out a way to completely route around the regulator, make it impossible for the regulator to do what they need to do, create a loophole using code and software and tech. And that whole kind of ethos just went away really quickly. And it was like, okay, what can we do to be compliant? And people just started jumping into actually going to the regulator and talking to them, seeking approval for what they were doing. The whole ethos changed. And that's a result of people that, they come in during these waves. They don't really have the ethos of or the reason to be here other than, making some money and seeing potential in the asset. And some of those people will evolve and start to care about privacy. A greater majority of them will leave if the number goes sideways too long. It's a cycle. We've seen all this kind of stuff before, but ultimately you're left with a larger group of people and a lot less of a cultural strength. And that's why it's so important to onboard these people in the right way, and to be upfront about what the hell Bitcoin is.
So I was curious about this. What do you call it? The Whirlpool unspent capacity.
Okay.
So with it making new all-time highs every few days. So I was really curious that wouldn't something like a total mixed coins kind of indicator be a better kind of indicator of showing how Whirlpool is popular? I don't know.
I didn't see the tweet, but it's a good question. So I think that unspent capacity is a more valuable metric than total amount mixed, even though total amount mixed is obviously a much, much higher number than 3,000.
Yeah.
Much, much higher. It's a bigger headline number, to get attention. The number of unspent capacity in Whirlpool is more This is the number of UTXOs that are available in the remixing pool. This is, or for the most part, the vast majority. I believe some of them, I think 800 BTC around that, or 700 is in the remix pool still. But it's a metric that's more important for showing the overall health of the pools, and the fact that this is liquidity that is structured. It's not from the same source. It's not from previous mixes. This is fresh. This is new, and it shows that it's a vibrant and growing pool. So that's why we track that one in particular, and we find it as an important metric. I don't track total amount mixed because it doesn't really make it, it's not important. I mean, it's a cool number to see how much people have sent through, and like I see sometimes TX0 is coming from mobile like that. They're talking like 200, 300, 400 BTC. And that's cool to see that go by, saying, wow, there's people with that much BTC using my software. And that would make the numbers go up, but it's not really an important number to me. What my most important number is unspent capacity and dojo usage. Unspent capacity, you guys can verify, you can check, because it's all on blockchain. Dojo usage, unfortunately, you have to trust whatever I say it is, because I'm the only one that can track that. It can't be verified, unfortunately. But if you trust what I'm saying, then you keep track of whenever I make the update on how Dojo is doing throughout the pools. But those are my two most important stats.
So yeah, it makes sense now. So because I didn't know that all the unspent capacity metric is actually means that these UTXOs potentially could be used for remixing. Is it that
right?
All of them are potentially could be used for remixing, or is it that some of them are actually free riders, but most of them may not be thinking they are free riding and they just didn't spend their coins?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as long as their outputs are in Whirlpool and they're equal output amounts, so one of the pool size amounts, that is part of unspent capacity. As soon as you make a spend, as soon as you do a post-mix spend out of Whirlpool, then it counts against it, right? So it's subtract that amount. So we've seen it in the past, or it's been like, I remember when it hadn't hit 3,000 yet, but it was getting close. And I remember it was at like 2,900 or 29,500, or something like that. 2,950, I mean. And then someone's like made a huge spend, I think like 300 Bitcoin, and it dropped it, it dropped the number. And I was pissed. I was like, oh no. But then we hit 3,000 again very quickly. So yeah, as people spend out, it goes down. And we expect people to spend out. We don't expect people to keep everything in Whirlpool all the time forever. We expect some people to either make spends to merchants for goods and services. We expect people to send out to their cold storage. We expect people to do all sorts of things. We just hope to create the right incentives to keep people in Whirlpool as long as they can, because the remixing is so important for you and for everyone else. And the 3,000 BTC indicator of unspent capacity shows that incentive is lining up, and people are taking advantage of that.
Yeah, actually, now that I think about it, it's a very huge number, and it's like this is really good news. So, could I ask about how much is the what's the number for total mixed? Is it possible to? Is there?
It would be possible. I haven't run it though. Maybe T-Dev has run it, but he's not awake right now, probably. So
I would have loved to have an idea of this the swap feature that's gonna be in Samurai in the future, and how would it look like to the user, how it would be used.
Sure. Sure. Good question. Right now, it's still very, very early. we've done swaps over testnet, but all with command line program. Nothing in the wallet or in the UI or anything like that. And as T-Dev said the other night on the Dirtcoin Diaries, it's very likely what we'll do is the same as we did with Whirlpool, where we started with just a command line and then built it into the products later on to see exactly how it's going to play out. But I can tell you from the way we're thinking at the first iteration that ends up in the wallet itself, we see it as mostly a tool for managing your toxic change from Whirlpool transaction zeros. So you've done all your transaction zeros. Maybe you started in the 0.5 pool and you worked your way down to all the way down to the 0.001 pool. And you have this one, this one UTXO that's like, I don't know, 6,000 sats, 7,000 sats or something like that. Right now, you have to manage that either by marking it as do not spend, and making sure not to use that UTXO for anything, or you can send it out to things like that don't require your identity, like Bit Refill and buy gift cards. Or what most of our users do, which we've discovered, is they use a custodial swapping service like, Changely or something swap this, swap that, whatever, and go into Monero, accumulate a small amount in Monero from the same type of Whirlpool toxic change UTXOs until they have enough to swap back into Bitcoin and enter in a new Whirlpool mix. So that's what we discovered that most users were doing, that to manage the UTXOs. So we said, well, we don't want to implement a swapping tool into Samurai because it requires the user to give up control of their private keys to a centralized party, even if it's only for 30 seconds or even if it's only for a minute. They still have to do that, and we're not comfortable with that. And then obviously with atomic swaps, that isn't a problem. So user would select their docs exchange from a Whirlpool transaction, TX0, swap into Monero, and presumably be able to just set a configurable amount to say I want to get up to X amount of BTC's worth of Monero and then swap back. Or it would be some like a round trip kind of operation. But you have to be careful with that because of timing analysis and whatnot. So there would have to be some sort of random time factor. But the ultimate goal would be to be disconnecting the TX0 UTXOs from your ownership.
There's a question in the chat from Bitcoin TYP is asking, are there any plans for I2P support in Samurai Wallet?
That was asked also on the Dirtcoin Diaries event the other day or last week. There's no immediate plans for anything. There's no concrete plans for I2P support, but it's definitely something we're interested in. We're very interested in anything that can be deployed as an alternative to Tor if and when Tor gets attacked again. So we're looking at various ways of mitigating against another global Tor outage, as we saw earlier in the year, and I2P is one of those potential mitigators. So it's something we're looking at, but there's nothing concrete planned for the wallet.
Huey asking, how's the local labeling project going?
It's still on the roadmap, but I wouldn't say there's been enormous progress on that front. We're working on a couple things to bring you guys before the end of the year that I think is going to be important and you'll be happy with. Solomon is part of a broader update. It's actually a series of updates that will need to occur throughout the wallet. So it's still very much in the works.
I dropped a link to the Dirtcoin Diaries podcast in the chat if anybody wants to check that out.
The portals.
I think the pool's good. It's an interesting topic. We haven't, T-Dev and I haven't discussed it specifically because, quite honestly, I don't think the 0.5 pool has really found its feet yet. I mean, it's definitely getting closer, especially if you're looking at the last couple of days. But it's still, it still ebbs and flows quite a bit. Like you'll get rushes of liquidity come in, and then like dead periods. Whereas the 0.01 pool or the 0.1 pool, those are pretty much constantly churning at this point. So maybe bigger pools once the half the Bitcoin pool is kind of more at that level. I don't know. Or we get a huge amount of demand. We haven't had a huge amount of demand for it. I mean, we've had a few people ask for bigger pools, but mostly people want like a 0.2 or 0.1 pool. So Lev up only asked what people are doing with docs change. Well, like I said, there's three main things that they seem to be doing. One is either just leaving them in the wallet, marking them do not spend, and just ignoring them. So once they're marked do not spend, the wallet won't spend them, won't lose them, so that it's safe to do that. In hopes that we'll create a feature that unlocks those UTXOs in the future and their potential, or that we create a smaller pool, for example. Other people, and I do this sometimes, is buying gift cards with them through BitRefill, so especially for things that just don't require KYC or anything like that. Maybe I want a pizza. I can get a gift card using the docs exchange. And then a lot of what most people are doing are swapping it to Monero using one of the custodial swap tools right now, Changely and like. How would it work if another wallet implements a Whirlpool? The secondary wallet would still connect to the Samurai Whirlpool server. It really is up to the wallet that's implementing Whirlpool. There's two ways to implement Whirlpool. One is to compete with Whirlpool in terms of liquidity. So you would have to run your own coordinator, and you would have to do all that stuff, right? So that would be competing with Whirlpool, but also running Whirlpool. So the users might win, right? Because the competition pool coordinator might make fees just 50% less across the board, for example. And then users get the same amount of privacy, but now they have a coordinator that's cheaper. That's a win. That's a free market. But the issue is in that model, liquidity is fractured. The new pool, the upstart pool, will need to build liquidity. We'll need to build a remixing base. We'll need to build a unspent capacity of their own in the pool to make it a desirable pool and a quick mixing pool. The other option is for the other wallet to implement Whirlpool, but use the Samurai run coordinator. Both options are valid. Both options are feasible. We prefer other wallets to tie into our coordinator for a number of reasons. There's a couple benefits to that. One, the benefit to liquidity is obvious. Increase of liquidity, diverse liquidity. Two, it actually increases the privacy model for non-Dojo Whirlpool users, because now there's a source of UTXOs that don't derive from Samurai Wallet at all, right? You have to understand that there's two servers. There's the Samurai Wallet server, and then there's the Whirlpool server. The Whirlpool server has no understanding of XPubs, has no understanding of wallets or anything like that. The wallet server is for your non-Dojo users, right? So what a third party wallet, whether they have their own full node or not, implementing Whirlpool would do is create a whole new group of users that are interacting with the Whirlpool server that the wallet server has no knowledge. It doesn't know anything about those wallets or those expos. They come from a completely different service, and that just creates a very nice pool, like diversity pool of income and liquidity into Samurai Wallet, into Whirlpool. So we've had discussions with various wallets, at least three, I think, of varying lengths, not implementing Whirlpool, but no one's one's ever gone the distance. Someone reached out to us recently in the last couple of days. That sounds promising. So hopefully we'll see something soon.
Trying a hodl wallet for the trying to get on board with what you're doing.
They haven't reached out. To us, but I mean, we are 100% open to any wallet who wants to implement Whirlpool. We'll even help with integration at this point because we think that this is so beneficial to pools to get other wallets on board. Nice to hear your voice, Cabby.
Yeah, I'm just walking back from the pub after watching the England game. I'm going to have to duck out again soon because I'm going to have a couple of gin and tonics to celebrate England getting through to the final.
There you go. Like I told Brother Rabbit, don't get your hopes up. Remember who your team is.
% they're a fucking letdown every time.
Every time, man. Every time. Brother Rabbit, would you mind kind of acting as like a host of this little shindig that we got going? You're doing that anyway, reading out the questions.
Yeah, sure.
Helpful.
There's a question in the chat that says, how would Samurai deal with a strong DDoS attack on the Whirlpool server?
That's a good question. I mean, the Whirlpool server has basically been under DDoS attack since we launched it. Of varying strength and successes. Besides the fact that, like I said, basically everything that we run is constantly being hit all the time. We've come up with ways of creating robust environments. I think in the case that Samurai server goes down or the Whirlpool server goes down, outside of our realm of control, basically, like maybe the host goes dark. I mean, the data center goes dark. Maybe the thing catches on fire. Who knows? Maybe it gets confiscated. The worst case scenario type things. We do have contingency plans in place, which we obviously are not going to discuss in public what they are, but we do have contingency plans in place. In the ultimate worst case scenario where Samurai disappears, for whatever reason, all the code is out there. It's open source. There's no reason why individuals wouldn't be able to spin up either their own hosted versions of all the infrastructure. They needed to do restore and recovery, or maybe a group of the community would say, we really like the tools and software, and we want to keep going, so we're gonna spin up a hosted version somewhere. So it's kind of like the Pirate Bay model, where DNS servers get taken or domains get seized, and then another one springs up somewhere else. We're not too worried about it. We're not doing anything illegal. There's nothing like what the Pirate Bay guys are doing, but planning for those kind of worst case scenarios is important, and we do have contingency plans in place.
Cool. I think that answered the second question, which was, is it easy to move liquidity to a new server if this was to occur?
That's a really good question. I mean, if it was like a brand, like the worst case scenario that I described, where like a group of the community had to run their own coordinator because Samurai disappeared, like in the blink of an eye, then no, it wouldn't be easy. It would take a coordinated, excuse the pun, effort to get people to move. Well, actually, I don't know. I'm not answering that with certainty because I haven't really thought about that so much. It might be possible that it would only just take a update to the client to allow users to input a new value for the coordinator address. That would allow liquidity to move over pretty seamlessly. So it might be. It might be easy, but it also might not. That's my wishy-washy answer to that.
Any more questions? Just shout out. There's another question that I think both Ergo and Zelko want to know, and that's will Samurai Wallet implement Dojo only pools?
No. That's just it's a meme on Twitter from as a response to the fact that Samurai knows the XPubs of some users based on the architecture of the wallet, which is an XPub based wallet, as a potential mitigation or response to that. That the thing is, it doesn't achieve the goal that they think it does, and it only fractures liquidity and it breaks up liquidity. And the name of the game in any coin going is liquidity, and you do not want to start fracturing things where you don't need to. So there isn't a dire need for anything like Dojo only pools. Any concerns that you may have as a Dojo user that Samurai can somehow link your outputs through process of elimination. Well, it's just so absurd that I hardly even discuss it anymore on Twitter or reply to it anymore on Twitter because it's been replied to a million times already. But remixing just by itself, one remix solves that issue for you as a Dojo user. And you should be aiming to get more than one remix anyway, right? So remixing solves the issue. Another thing that solves this perceived issue is the fact that going back to what Econo Alchemist asked about, which was other wallets implementing Whirlpool and tying into the coordinator. If other wallets did that, then the coordinator now has a bunch of new liquidity, new participants, where the Samurai wallet server has no idea about them. It's the same thing as essentially increasing the Dojo users in the group, because the Dojo users and this new group of Wallet B users, the coordinator knows the exact same thing about them. The coordinator knows the exact same thing about them as a Samurai Wallet XPub user. The only difference between those users are the Samurai Wallet server also knows about them. So no Dojo only pools. Pools are going to remain mixed for Dojo or non-Dojo, because that has nothing to do with on-chain. Dojo or non-Dojo has nothing to do with on-chain privacy. It has nothing to do with the on-chain footprint of a Whirlpool transaction. Is completely a whole different conversation to how using Whirlpool affects your on-chain privacy, and that's really what our concern is.
Cool. Yeah, question from me. I always see a lot of talk on Twitter about Paynim's BIP47 implementation. When are other wallets going to implement it? And you and TDev are all more welcoming to point them into the right direction as to where to pull the code from, to give them like a helping start. Have you had any sort of any wallets reach out to you personally to ask questions as to how to implement it? Or is it a bit stale?
Yes. No, we've had wallets and services reach out and discuss how they can implement it. It's kind of like the discussions that we've had about Whirlpool as well. You know, they reach varying levels of getting close to maybe something happening, but then things fall through. BIP47 it's kind of difficult actually to implement. So I understand why some might give up on that task, especially the earlier version 1 and version 2. Version 3 and I believe now version 4, they're easier to implement than previously. So I understand it to a degree. But ultimately the code is all there, right? Like, so anyone who's dedicated enough to the feature and really understands the potential of the feature would be able to implement it just based off of reviewing the implementation that we had, whether it's the same language that your project's in or not. You would still be able to follow along. I think that it's actually BIP47 is really one of the most powerful features of the wallet, and even within Samurai, we don't even come really close to maximizing the potential that BIP47 has. We're only really we're just scratching the surface. We're just getting started with it. So I don't think that's recognized enough. Otherwise, I think people would be clamoring to get it implemented.
Yeah, I hope some other wallets implement it sometime soon. It'd be nice for many reasons.
Another question was about the Canary Um, have you reconsidered your Canary update cycle? 1 year might be too long.
Yeah. So what I have on there is 1 year to give me. Well, it was at a time where I wasn't actually updating the website all that often, to give me kind of a buffer. But in practice, if you actually keep an eye on that canary and monitor it, I pretty much update that once a month. I go anytime. I make it a point that anytime that I'm on the website server, what I'm doing is just an update to some text or whatever, that I upload a new signed canary. So yeah, I'll probably change the text to make it something like 60 days to give myself some buffer still, just in case I miss a month. I don't want everyone freaking out, but also we pretty much are doing monthly release updates this since the beginning of this year. So I'm going to be in the website monthly anyway.
I think Whirlpool has a very nice potential to like actually add to the privacy features of both Lightning, and also it also would increase the frequency of the whirlpools as well from the on-chain side. So I don't know. I think there's definitely something that could benefit from this kind of thought process.
So
I
I
mean,
mean, I'll let him answer, but I would say this. I would say that in that transaction between Lightning benefiting and Whirlpool benefiting from Lightning, I think it's more that Lightning would benefit far more than like anyone using Lightning would benefit far more from like any sort of integration between like Whirlpool into Lightning type deal than a Whirlpool user would gain from having Lightning. Like
Yeah, I have to agree. I
really
don't really.
the same.
I mean, I get what you're saying, Decode, and it's nice to hear your voice for the first time. You've been around for a while. Yeah, I get what you're saying, but I just don't see it. I see Lightning still as very niche, even more niche than what we're doing. And I see it as ultimately contradictory. I don't see it as a privacy friendly network as much as I see it as a bank friendly network. And I think that any benefit would be to the detriment of the liquidity pool. I think it would possibly encourage users, a small number of users, but users nonetheless, to leave the Whirlpool unspent capacity pool, leave the low pool, for what they, for some sort of perceived privacy benefit that they're getting on Lightning, which maybe they've been misled about, or they don't fully understand consequences. Now, I think that for Lightning users, it would be really useful. I think Lightning users have wanted Lightning supported Samurai from the very beginning. And I don't blame them. I mean, I'm biased, but I think Samurai's, the best Android Bitcoin wallet. So why wouldn't you want Lightning as the best wallet, right? Like mobile wallet. It's just not on our radar. Like it just really isn't. So unless things change dramatically, I don't see that happening. And I don't want people leaving Whirlpool for Monero either, right? Like I want people to stick around in Whirlpool, to spend from Whirlpool, and then to use Monero to swap it to Monero as a tool to manage whatever deterministic links that might occur that they can't manage with Bitcoin. Whether because it's just uneconomical to spend to Whirlpool that amount or whatever the case may be. So it's a real balance of how these things are presented to the user, what features are presented to the user.
And there's a question Decode asked, any chance of getting replaced by fee option in Postmix wallet?
I'm not opposed to it. I need to talk to T-Dev and Laurent about it. There may be privacy considerations they have. But from my limited understanding, I don't see a reason why it shouldn't be. I'm okay with it. I've been, so just a little insider information, this month and a little bit of last month, I've been focused on a lot of UI and UX for the wallet and updates to the wallet, trying to get it prepared for 1.0 release. And one of the cool things, one of the exciting things that I get to kind of do when I'm working on these different screens is build out the functionality that currently exists in Samurai Wallet, like RBF, for example, replace my fee, but actually present it to the user in a way and maximize the utility of that kind of functionality. You know, create systems and UI for, you know, systems whereby you can kind of gradually nudge the fee up multiple times, right? Because right now with replace by fee, when you initiate it, when you boost the transaction, we assume you want to confirm right away, so we max out, you know, the fee that you're replacing. But you might actually just want to nudge it up by an additional SAT, right? And you might want to do that more than once. And maybe you only want it to go up to 10 sats, but you're willing to start at 1 sat increments and you're willing to wait, you know, 12 hours. All of that can be handled within a wallet. All of that can be done with Samurai Wallet. There's just no UI for it right now, no UX for it. So I get to kind of play around with those ideas and those functionalities and put them into actual usable, you know, features for users. So since I'm already working on those kind of things with RBF in general, I'll bring it up. I'll ask if we can get it enabled. There's not a privacy reason why it's not enabled. No.
Cool. And DC786 has suggested that it might be desirable to have like a pending transaction screen. So I think that goes into what you were saying there about, you know, better UI UX on feedback from the user in a high fee environment.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we haven't really had a high fee environment for a while now. I mean, when we were really new, maybe we were only a year or two old, blocks were building. This was right around the time, right before the Bcash split, right before Segwit 2x and stuff like that. So blocks were filled, whether it was legitimate or scam transactions is a debate people still have. But regardless of the provenance of these transactions, it was pretty bad. And we didn't have Dojo yet. We had something else that was Dojo before Dojo, and it couldn't even keep up. It was always constantly behind. It was rough. So we haven't had an environment like that for years. However, there are spikes in the mempool, and users being able to utilize, to create their transactions and manage their transactions effectively in the way that they want to manage them is something that we've always wanted to give users. And it's a challenge on mobile because you're very limited in space, and it's very easy to create either a really ugly app or a really confusing app. You also are limited in how you can explain things to the user. Only a small subset are going to get on Telegram and ask questions. Only a small subset are going to go looking for the answers on Google. They can't figure it out, they're not going to use it. Or they're going to use it really, poorly. So a lot of that has to be considered when building these UIs. And a lot of the reason that I've been holding off on going to 1.0 is just because I think while the UI is good in the sense that it's not I don't think it's overwhelming to users, and I think that it's simple when it needs to be simple, but it can get more complex and advanced as the user needs it to be. I still think there for a real green user, someone who is just really coming in blind, it's still too confusing. It's still it's going to be a higher support cost. Like, those users will come in and they'll try to set a wallet up, maybe they'll get confused and frustrated and leave, or they'll email support and then we'll have to walk them through, and then you factor that by times 1,000, and you need to hire a new support guy, right? Like, that's just how it kind of goes. So we want to kind of lock in the experience stuff first before opening up the floodgates. So we'll get there. I think anyone who's been using the wallet has seen dramatic improvements and changes over the last year to UI and UX, or the last couple of years anyway, to UI and UX, and hopefully it's a positive improvement. Hopefully things are getting better and more intuitive and easier to use.
Question from Connor Alchemist. I think I know the answer, but I'll let you go for it. Can users create a new wallet with a blank passphrase, or is some type of entry in the passphrase field required?
Creating a wallet and entering the passphrase field is required. Yes, you need a passphrase if you're creating a wallet. You need to create a passphrase if you're creating a wallet with Samurai. If you're importing a wallet via Mnemonic, whether that's 12 words, 24 words, whatever, you don't need to add a passphrase. So if you really don't want a passphrase on your Samurai wallet, you have to restore a Mnemonic. So you could theoretically create a wallet on Samurai with the passphrase, then copy the 12 words that it generates, and then restore those 12 words without the passphrase. And now you have a passphrase-free wallet. But we really don't recommend that. We think it's much better if your wallet has a different passphrase, and you should make use of that.
If importing an external wallet, then and you don't have a passphrase, would that mean that the encrypted backup, inverted commas, wouldn't be encrypted?
It would be disabled. That's one of the reasons why we recommend people that people have a passphrase so they can have access to that encrypted backup.
Yeah.
And also it makes it more difficult for Whirlpool because Whirlpool on desktop uses that passphrase as authentication for the client. So when you don't have a passphrase on your wallet, you can still access Whirlpool, but you have to set up a passphrase on the client on Samurai. So it just is a little less fluid. So I mean, if you can avoid it, just create a wallet with a passphrase. Like a standard wallet, that's good. For whatever reason, you must have a wallet without a passphrase, then you can do it, but it's just not recommended.
Max is asking, is there any way to know how many free remixes a UTXO gets on mobile only?
On mobile, no, not right now. Right now, if you have the Whirlpool service running, and then you go to your UTXO list from the Whirlpool screen, the Postmix UTXO list, you'll see remix counts as you can track them. But the desktop client is more reliable for viewing remix counts as it is right now. That's something that we obviously want to rectify and make it clearer on mobile how many remixes you obtain, and make mixing on mobile just a little bit more clear in general.
Any other questions? Just drop them in the chat.
Is there any inherent problem of having back spending from Postmix Whirlpool for the privacy implications of it, except for obviously linking those two payments as knowing each other going forward?
Back spending you asked about in Postmix?
Yeah, if is this a consideration, or is it not really?
It's something I've been thinking about literally the last 4 days as I reworked the set screens. I think we erred on the safe side when it came to Postmix account, and basically enforcing a minimum of Stonewall when leaving when Postmix when possible, and you should be able to at least obtain a Stonewall after mixing because you have enough UTXOs. And disabling a lot of the Postmix spend tool spend tools that you have in your account 0. So batch and even initially Ricochet, we didn't have Ricochet in Postmix initially. We've slowly started to re-enable things. So we have enabled Ricochet, for example. We have enabled the ability to do individual UTXO spend from Postmix, like you can do from account 0. And I think, and again, like batch spending, or like your previous question, batch spending is another one like that, I believe, where if there's not a privacy concern that we can re-enable it, it may have tweaked pools, you may say that you can only do a batch spend from single UTXO spends. We have to consider it, but it is something that we consider. So like every feature that gets into Samurai Wallet, every spend feature, everything goes through this process where we're analyzing things from an adversarial point of view, and that's really one of Laurent's best uses within Samurai, is trying to attack what we do. So it is in consideration, but I don't have an answer yet as to whether it's going to be enabled or not. I would like it to be. I've had the use for VAT spend from Postmix personally. So, I'm a big believer in that we can't get in users' way. We can just try to suggest the best practices, because if the user wants to do something, they're going to do it. They're going to figure out a way to do it, and the way that they figure out might be more harmful than just letting them do the thing initially, right? So, like, for example, if I need to do a batch spend from Postmix, I'll just send the Postmix UTXO to to another intermediary wallet or my account 0, and just do, like I said, a full UTXO spend, batch it, and then mix the change. So that's a lot of steps that a user has to take and potentially mess up just because they want to do a batch spend. So unless there's some glaring issue, I would err on the side of enabling it. But we'll see what our findings are.
Okay, awesome. Cheers.
Few guys typing in the chat. One from Econo Alchemist. Do you have any funny or interesting post-mix spends you have observed, like spending all to a KYC exchange, for example, which would obviously be really bad privacy practice from, kind of almost undoing all the good work you did for your well pooling?
Yeah, no, honestly, we haven't, we don't look at Postmix spends all that much. We did a pretty comprehensive look at Postmix spending middle of last year, I believe, when we were told that there was an address reuse bug with Whirlpool. So in order to figure out if there really was one, and we analyzed all Postmix spends that ever occurred on Whirlpool to that date. So that was the only analysis that we did on that type of thing. But we were more looking for reuse, not kind of what they were doing. In spot checking things, I haven't seen anything like that. I think that by and large, the users are using the tools for the most part pretty much properly. I haven't seen huge consolidations. I mean, I've seen a few, but not on a kind of a large level. I see a lot of stonewalls. I see a lot of single spends. I see a lot of what could be potentially stowaways. There's no way to really know. So by and large, I think most users are behaving well when they're post mixing. We tend to look more on the premix side of things. So if we see a large TX0 come in, like, I'm talking like 500 to 1,000 BTC UTXOs come in, we'll look at those UTXOs just to make sure, and keep an eye on the UTXOs just to make sure they're not trying to Sybil attack, and that they're entering the Whirlpool in a normal way. They're not breaking up their UTXOs into, trying to go to other clients or whatever and trying to just perform an attack. To date, we haven't had any organized, or we haven't detected at least any organized Sybil attack behavior. All of the whales that come in are, from what we can see, are above board, and they just start trying to mix their coins like everyone else. And that's great. That's great to see. But once it's in Whirlpool, we're not looking anymore really. I just believe that a coordinator has that duty to maintain, the sanitary conditions of the pool. A coordinator has the duty to make sure that they're not being Sybil attacked, and that if they are, they use the tools that they have available to them, which is blacklisting, banning UTXOs, saying, this UTXO is potentially Sybil attacking, and the coordinator's just going to reject that UTXO hash. And we thankfully haven't had to do that because of Sybil attacks or anything like that. We've been lucky there. Now, there, like I said earlier, there has been basically since we launched Whirlpool attacks on it, but not Sybil attacks. There's been a lot of attacks trying to get free mixing, like bypass the TX0 structure, bypass the feed to the coordinator, lots of those types of attacks and attempts, but nothing that would put users, at disadvantage or at risk.
Oh, that's interesting. Could do some free TX0s myself.
Yeah.
Everyone's always
fake.
asking for a SCODE.
Yeah, fake ones, fake S codes, fake we've seen all sorts of different. I mean, people have put a lot of effort into breaking Whirlpool, which we're thankful for because, it makes our system more robust. But they haven't succeeded yet.
Can you elaborate on how much use the Ricochet gets? I always feel that it's probably quite an unloved feature. Maybe because I don't know. I get the impression that the people that are already using Samurai Wallet are maybe not obtaining their Bitcoin through KYC exchanges anyway, or selling their Bitcoin back to a KYC exchange. So you don't tend to see any talk on the chats or Twitter about Ricochet as much. Only few and far between. Can you elaborate on if that's sort of very popular at all?
I would say it's fairly popular. Yeah, it doesn't get talked a lot. I think mostly because it's our oldest feature. It's been in the wallet for a very long time, since the early versions, and it just works, and it's a really easy feature to use, right? Like Whirlpool, in the grand scheme of things, not an easy feature to use. Lots of things that you need to learn about, right? And that's one of the things I was talking about with the UX. That type of stuff needs to get better. Even stowaway, like it's interactive. You need to do things. With Ricochet, you just need to turn a toggle. It's really pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. There's not much to it. So it doesn't get a lot, and that's the reason why I don't think it gets talked about too much on like Telegram and on social media and stuff like that. Usage wise, I would call it. I mean, it's not like Whirlpool. It doesn't have that many users, but I would call it a small, loyal user base of Ricochet. I think it has from what I've been told, talking to users, a lot of the users of Ricochet are peer-to-peer sellers, like they used to be on like local Bitcoins. Now I guess it's like, I don't know what they use these days, Paxful or something like that. Huddle, and BISC. Those, well, maybe not BISC, but Huddle, I think is still is popular. They use Ricochet when funding, and of course, users who are sending to KYC exchanges. We see a lot of users sending to Coinbase, sending to Kraken and those exchanges with a Ricochet, and it's because the feature just works. Whether they tell you this or not, they like to really kind of big up their abilities to see chain analysis guys, but ultimately proximity is still such a major contributor to their heuristics. Proximity is something that they can get away with as businesses. I mean, as a viable, best faith effort. Proximity, and what Ricochet does is just adds proximity. So it really is it's a cool feature. It works really well, and I think the people that need it are using it. We haven't. I mean, it's like I said, man, it's been in the wallet since I believe 2015, maybe early 2016, and we've never had one complaint on it. No one's ever messaged us that whole time and said, "Hey, I used Ricochet and my account got closed. My exchange account got closed," or anything like that. That whole time it's been in use, and no one's ever complained that it was a rip off. So, you have to go by what your users are telling you or not telling you. If they're not complaining, then it's because it's working. But one thing that we expected, of course, was that the launch of Whirlpool on mobile would reduce the amount of ricochets that were being utilized, and that has been true to an extent. But that's why I say it's a small but loyal group, because once that initial drop off of users going to use Whirlpool instead of Ricochet, it maintained the cost. It has maintained a constant kind of usage. So that's why I say I think these people really actually need the feature, and they're using it because it solves problems.
Yeah, I don't think from my knowledge, there is any other wallets that implement a similar tool to Ricochet. I don't believe.
No, one of the big issues with wallets, I think, is that they're not trying to give their users solutions. Like they're doing the things that a Bitcoin wallet needs to do, right? Needs to send, needs to receive, and if you're lucky, that you're getting some primitive version of coin control. If you're lucky, but those are just functionalities. But there has to be flows and things, and these functionalities can be put together to form a cohesive tool that solves a problem for users. And none of them seem to be doing that. They just seem to be doing functionality A and functionality B and functionality C, and none of them are cohesive. None of them really make sense together. Or maybe they make sense together, but they haven't hooked up in the way that makes sense. There's all these different variables it's a shame, because a lot of it just seems to be focused on figuring out a revenue model, and that always ultimately ends up with some sort of fiat on ramp, some sort of buy Bitcoin with or DCA in the Bitcoin via the app, and that there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but it's such an easy way out, and you're not advancing your product and your application or anything for the users. You're just figuring out a new way to kind of milk the user, figure out a way to extract more revenue out of them. And that's cool, that's fine, but you should get revenue out of a user by providing a tool that the user needs, where the user, like, basically, like you said, no other wallet has implemented this type of functionality. And Ricochet is dead easy to implement. It's not like the 47 is dead easy. There's no excuse other than you just don't know that your users need that type of functionality. Or maybe the users don't. I mean, maybe it's unique to us that our users who are focused on privacy, who are focused on this type of thing, also require this type of functionality in the actual real world. It's not like theoretical to them. They need it. They're willing to spend money on it.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think that, not to blow smoke up your ass, but Samurai provides some great tools, and what goes back to what you said earlier about the unspent capacity. At the end of the day, Samurai's a hot wallet, and so people clearly feel it's valuable and safe to use it, and provides the utility that they need. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so much unspent capacity currently being held.
Exactly.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Hey, brother.
What's up, man? I've been listening to all these softball questions. I'm sick of it. I'm ready to hit you with some real journalism here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Well, first of all, do you guys have any idea on the ratio or how users are downloading the wallet, or do you have any idea, or are they moving away from Play Store or onto F-Droid, APK? Like, is there any way to track that?
No, not really. It's hard to track. We're growing in the Play Store, and I could track clicks on the website for the APK, but that wouldn't be very reliable. Honestly, and on the F-Droid, to my knowledge anyway, there's no tracking mechanism on the F-Droid.
No, there is no way,
Right.
unfortunately.
Okay.
So you can only track down downloads that come through the Google Play Store.
Right.
If you get the app through GitLab or F-Droid, nobody knows. And
Yeah.
since the wallet is Tor only, then you're fucked.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly.
So, do you ever see the possibility in the future of um, the wallet actually having some sort of variance in the features between what's offered in Play Store and maybe what's hosted on the F-Droid? Like for example, the stealth mode making a comeback on the F-Droid version, um, just to make Leo and wallet scrutiny make their heads explode.
Yeah, I mean that was the plan ultimately with stealth mode and remote wipe and such. Unfortunately, it actually came down to a change at the Android level that was made, so the functionality wouldn't work regardless of whether it was Google Play or not. So the whole functionality needs to be rewritten and replaced in that particular case. But I mean, I think it's one of those, again, worst case scenario contingency plans that we have plans for. If we were to, one, get kicked out of the Play Store, or two, have to neuter the software to remain in the Play Store. It's not an uncommon situation. Many apps go through this. It was very, very recently that gambling apps were allowed in the Play Store. That did not stop the app-based gambling industry from growing tremendously. They had insanely good onboarding for users to install sideload APKs like you wouldn't believe. You want to talk about UX for grandmas? The gambling guys figured that one out. We have examples in various industries on how it can be dealt with. I right now don't foresee anything that would preclude us from the Play Store. I keep up on the guidelines that they publish for developers for inclusion in the App Store. We're still not running foul of things. The only thing that I've identified as a potential risk in the near-ish future is that Google is making noise and talking about requiring developers to provide their signing key so that Google will sign the app on behalf of the developers. That's obviously something that's unacceptable to us. I mean, they already have this functionality in the app in Play Store. You can opt for this opt-in feature. We of course don't do that. But there's rumblings that they're going to make it mandatory for that functionality. So that's something that we would have to figure out exactly how we're going to address it. Do we just have like a real dummy app in Google Play for onboarding? Maybe like not even private keys on thing that we kind of use to onboard them into Samurai Wallet, or like real one, or what? What's the deal with that? So that's the only thing that I've identified as a potential risk in the future. Other than that, no, there's nothing that I can see that we would have to maintain separate versions. Though we want to bring back the two features that you mentioned, remote and the stuff.
Right. So I think also the I'm reading something the other day about the Play Store. The app versions are changing. They're going to this AAB bundle or something like that.
Right.
But I think I read that if you're already in there under an APK, you get to stay as an APK. Is that right?
That's what they're saying right now. Yeah. But they changed their mind at a whim. So you really can't rely on what they're saying now. We've seen policies change like within 24 hours of them supposedly going live. Where they've been saying one thing for 3 months, and then suddenly 24 hours before the policy is enacted, changed to something completely different. So Google's like that. I think making inroads now, getting people onto F-Droid, getting people onto the direct APK is a good way to start getting more people doing that. I would like to see less people on Google, ultimately, because whether it's 5 years down the line or more, eventually there's going to be something. We're going to either be out of Google, or going to be severely limited, and we're going to want a seamless transition. So starting now is a good idea. And that's one of the reasons why I did that.
When Monero swaps?
I would not expect Monero swaps until early next year.
Sweet.
At least,
That's
you know,
okay.
yeah, at least with the wallet. I think that there'll be testnet stuff. There'll be little maybe tools that you can play with, CLI tools and stuff before then, but nothing cohesive, until early next.
Sweet. I figured. I know it's been in the works for a while, so
Yes.
it's way over my head.
No, it's mainly because Comet is still working things out and they keep iterating, so it's not really finished, not even the implementation that Comet is working on. And furthermore, there is another CCS funded project called Firecaster. So at the end of the day, we don't know for sure. Firecaster is dependent upon Taproot, and as you may know, it's Signal and activated or whatever, but it's actually not on Bitcoin blockchain yet. So both implementations are just still work in progress. You may imagine both Bitcoin wallets and Monero wallets are still just working it out as well on the go. So you cannot expect it tomorrow, even though there has been some testnet atomic swaps or even mainnet on-chain atomic swaps happened to be delivered to the public tomorrow, because it's not done yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're, the comment guys and us, we're fine with delivering, as long as it's stable and user can't lose money. We're fine delivering stuff that's not fully, implemented as spec, right? Like to a user, because it's better to get users using stuff sooner rather than later. But also, as Anthony was saying, it is still early days, and on our end, we're working on quite a number of things for this year that are in the pipeline that we want to get done. So this is just fitting into our release schedule towards the beginning of next year.
Right on. I had a question about some of the transaction tool post-mix tools you guys have. So basically, I don't understand Cahoots or Stonewall pretty much at all.
Okay. All right. No problem.
If you could
I
give
think
like a
that
brief
you're
rundown.
in the majority, probably.
Gotcha.
Yeah, sure. So Stonewall. Let's start with Stonewall. Stonewall exists both in the post-mix wallet and in the unmixed wallet. And Stonewall, just by itself, is a method of coin selection. Ultimately, to your wallet, selecting inputs that have UTXOs that haven't been seen together, and arranging them in a way and amounts that increase what we call transaction entropy, or the confusion of the transaction, the number of combinations between inputs and outputs that transaction makes. So a Stonewall has a minimum entropy level of 1.4 bits, which is essentially saying that you can't with certainty connect the resulting transaction input to output. It could be that this transaction is two participants, for example. Is controlled by two participants, right? So that's just a normal, everyday, average Stonewall. And most users can create these Stonewall transactions once they've used their wallet a number of times, because you require a certain number of unspent outputs. And it also requires that you're spending less than your total amount in the wallet, right? So there's some mathematical constraints to it. The second part of Stonewall, which we released a little later, is Stonewall x2 or Stonewall x2. And we classify a Stonewall x2 as a Cahoots transaction. So now going to your question about Cahoots. Cahoots, just think of Cahoots as any transaction that is collaborative in nature. So meaning you and another participant are collaborating to create this transaction.
So I've heard it described as, that's the one that's like an on-demand coin join, right?
Right. So Cahoots is kind of a container for any transaction that is collaborative, meaning that you're joining coins with another user to create the transaction. And there's currently two transactions that can be classified as Cahoots. The first one to talk about is Stonewall times two, because I just explained Stonewall. Stonewall times two is exactly like a Stonewall, except instead of your wallet emulating a second participant, an actual second participant is used, right? So you're sending to wherever, you're sending to Namecheap, and you scan the QR code, but you say, actually, I want this to be a Stonewall X2, meaning that some of the inputs are going to belong to your buddy and some are going to belong to you. And the person who's receiving the Bitcoins, or Namecheap in this example, they don't know whether that is a one person or a two person coin join. And in this case, it's a two person coin join. And then the second transaction that can be classified as Cahoots is called a stowaway. And in other implementations call it a pay join. It's a very similar type of transaction. And this is good for when you're collaborating with the person that you're sending to. So in this case, you would be sending to another Samurai Wallet user, and you'd say, I want to send you Bitcoin, and we're going to do a stowaway instead of just a normal QR code scan, right? And the reason why you do a stowaway is because you're obtaining two kind of levels of privacy here. The first level of privacy is it's like kind of a steganographic spend, because it looks just like a normal, simple transaction. It has a couple inputs and two outputs. One is presumably the destination, and one is presumably the change, right? Like just a normal everyday transaction. But in fact, with the two-person coin join, where the other person is receiving the Bitcoin that you're sending, they're providing an input and they're getting back an output. And the amount that is on the blockchain, when you go to look at it, is not the actual corresponding amount that you sent them. So the amount that you actually sent them is masked. It's obscure. So that's one of the benefits of that type of transaction. So those are the two Cahoots transactions. And the reason they're kind of separated out from Stonewall by itself is because you're not always going to have a friend that you can use to collaborate. Right. So when you don't have that availability, you have at the very least a Stonewall, which is just a decoy. It's an emulation using all of your UTXOs. But when you're viewing it on chain, it looks exactly like a Stonewall X2. So it could be one person emulation, or it could be a two person.
Okay. So for the Stonewall, that's, you need to have another Samurai user that or have a relationship with, and you collaborate.
For the Stonewall X2. For the Stonewall X2, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But for the regular Stonewall, no. Like a regular Stonewall is just your own UTXO being used the same way. Stonewall X2 is you have a collaborator. And there's a Telegram room where people kind of meet and say, hey, I want to do a Stonewall to this amount at this fee rate. Does anyone want to help me? And people get their Stonewalls and their stowaways done, or most of their Stonewalls done that way. But if you onboard like a buddy or a couple buddies or your meetup group or whoever, it can start to become a really powerful tool where every spend that you're doing, whether it be after whirlpooling or before whirlpooling, is an additional high entropy coin join transaction. So it's pretty strong functionality. Much like all of our functionality, it gets better. The experience improves as more people use it. So if you can get a user base around you, then it really starts to open up.
A quick question, and how do you do the Stonewall by itself, not the Stonewall X2? How do you do it? I've only seen the Stonewall X2.
So Stonewall is enabled automatically if it can be. So again, there's certain rules to Stonewall, and it's not, sometimes your wallet won't be able to create a Stonewall based on what you're sending to and the amount you're sending and fee rate, all of those mathematical inputs. But when you send on the send screen as normal, if a Stonewall can be enabled, it will be, and it will be on the second screen where you set the fee rate.
Copy that. Thank you.
There's a troll in the chat, I feel, but I'll ask the question anyway because newcomers might have the concern: is how do we know the other side of a coin join isn't a spook?
How do you know the other side of a coin join isn't a spook? Well, I mean, it could be. The other side of the coin could be a spook. What you're relying on is the structure and liquidity of Whirlpool and the rules of Whirlpool to minimize the damage that a spook can have in an output, right? Like, that's basically it. We know that, if a spook came in, put in a bunch of coins, we know that each one of those coins that they go to mix is only going to be part of an individual mix. It's not going to be part of an entire mix, right? It's going to be limited in scope. If they're trying to come in with multiple clients, we would notice that. Like I said earlier in the chat, we do look out for civil attack type of behaviors. So really, as easy as it is for you to start whirlpooling, right? All you really need to do is install an APK, and you're not asked any information, you're not asked any questions, you're able to use Tor. It's just as easy for an adversary of yours to do the same thing. So you have to assume that your adversary is using the tools that you're using. So when you design your tools, you have to make sure they're designed and architected in a way where you're not giving your adversary an advantage over your users. And we think that Whirlpool is structured and built in a way where that fallout is mitigated.
No, and I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, if the CoinJoin implementation is right, it's zero link. Who cares if it's a spook at the end of the day? The whole point is that if you do enough remixes like 3, 4, 5, 10, there is no point that it's going to be the CIA or the NSA on the other end because you're going to remix a couple times, so the traces are going to be moot.
Well, that's right. Yeah, remixing is, like I said, a huge benefit. But yeah, they're getting, they're obtaining the same level of privacy that you are at the end of the day in their outputs. And as long as their outputs aren't, a majority of the mix, basically, is what you're looking to prevent. And in a unmodified client, that's impossible. In a modified client, it would be possible. And that's why we monitor for that type of behavior, and we haven't seen it yet. But yeah, it's definitely I don't consider it a troll question. I consider it a valid question. But you just have to kind of look at it a little bit deeper. It's like, yeah, it's probable that your adversary is using the same tools that you are, and that's one of the reasons why we've been very vocal about the vulnerabilities and issues with the Wasabi wallet. Because that tool is absolutely being used, and it's being used in a way that's detrimental to the users that are using it. Sorry, but that's just how it is.
Staying on the Whirlpool topic, Hedy Wooks put a question in the chat. I'll sort of summarize it to what I think he's asking, and that's other than using Whirlpool to sort of prevent maybe like a state level I don't know, like the government from tracking your transactions when you leave a KYC exchange. What other uses can CoinJoin have? What do they provide a user of Samurai Wallet? If you're not bothered about the government coming after you, why should you use CoinJoin? What should you care about?
Right. I get it. Well, honestly, I don't think it's really the government that the majority of people are hiding from when it comes to Whirlpool. I think that the majority of people are looking to obtain the same basic financial privacy that they're able to have with fiat, in that, you know, your peers and people around you and people you transact with on a day-to-day basis can't just peer into your accounts and see, you know, how much Bitcoin you have, and what your prior transaction history is, you know. So I think it's more about just obtaining basic fundamental financial privacy that we all, I believe, should expect and do expect in our daily lives. It's only Bitcoin where, you know, you're participating on a public ledger in the open. So CoinJoin, you know, one, Whirlpool is specifically zero link CoinJoin, true zero link CoinJoin. It breaks forward tracking, right? So at the point where you enter the CoinJoin, your trail ends there. And what you do after that, it's basically a clean slate. Can you fuck it up? Yeah, you can. You can do some stupid shit. But it's a rebirth. It's a clean slate, right? And I think that's attractive for all Bitcoin users, whether it be because they want to store their Bitcoin in cold storage, so they want to go through a couple rounds of mixing, make sure that their slate is clean for the new cold storage. I've seen that use case a lot, but primarily it's a spending tool. It's a tool for spenders, right? Like, just because I'm buying something, just because I'm buying VPN service, just because I'm buying a gift card on BitRefill, just because I'm paying for hosting, whatever I'm paying for with Bitcoin, I don't want the merchant to know my prior transaction history. And using CoinJoin outputs, or even descendants of CoinJoin outputs, right? Like a couple transactions will change of CoinJoin. That's good enough for a lot of the merchants out there. So, you know, I see it as a de facto step that users need to take. You know, they receive Bitcoin and they CoinJoin it, they mix it. What they do after that, there's a variety of options: how they spend it, how they move it to storage, how they do all this sort of stuff. But the mixing, the Whirlpool has to become a de facto step.
Econo Alchemist asks, from what I understand, Taproot will result in a new address type. Is implementing support for that address type on the Samurai Wallet roadmap?
Yeah, you'll be able to. I believe the progression is that you'll be able to spend to that address type. We won't necessarily have that address type as a receive address because there's no real benefit to Samurai users. But Samurai users will be able to spend to that new address type.
I have a question. So, onboarding, let's say, a family member of mine that's not so familiar with how Bitcoin works and derivation paths of wallets and stuff like that. A simple way of just download Samurai Wallet, the APK from the website, make sure it's legit from the actual site, and they can use the wallet. But say in the future, if I'm not around, how can I assure them that that the wallet will work? Will the older versions still be compatible, or will in the future they need to upgrade to a new one? How can they trust in the future they're getting it from the right place, and it's a secure version in the future? Somebody that's more technical can learn all that, but for somebody that doesn't really understand any of that stuff, is there an easy way I can future proof their confidence without me?
Sure. Yeah, no, I get what you're asking. Well, I think on the topic of the APK, how that's obtained, I think the best way for what your problem is to use F-Droid. Use the F-Droid variant, because that it works, like a Google Play would work, meaning auto updates will happen, and the key used, if the key changes, it will provoke a warning to the user. So, if the signing key were to change, it wouldn't just install update automatically. As per wallet interoperability, that's a very good question. And fundamentally, Samurai Wallet is a BIP32 wallet, which is a Bitcoin standard. You know, there's add-on stuff that we've supported. We support Segwit, for example, so that adds BIP49 and BIP84 support. We support different custom derivation paths. All of that stuff is add-ons on top of a base standard. So what I would recommend is maybe you walk through the person, you know, at some point, walk through the process of restoring their wallet in a third party wallet, like maybe Electrum, which has a very easy auto restore functionality for Samurai Wallet specifically. So that takes care of the wallet interoperability. So you're not like locked into Samurai Wallet. In the case that Samurai Wallet disappears, you don't lose access to your funds, that kind of thing. And having that confidence of how to do it, you know, will be good for you and good for them. Besides that, I think just it's kind of like just take it slow with them. You know, you can another thing you could do is that you could host your own dojo, and instead of them onboarding to Samurai servers, they would onboard to your dojo servers. So you would have a deeper level of interaction with them. You know, you would be the point person, not Samurai. So that's an option as well.
Yeah, thank you. So two answers. One is you would prefer people use F-Droid, automatic updates, and then the second one is, for example, run them through how to load up an Electron on a Tails USB, for example, put in the derivation, and you know, so they know how to use it even without the Samurai.
Yeah, exactly. I think that goes a long way right there in terms of building confidence in the system. And I recommend Electrum solely because they built in a auto restore wizard for Samurai. So it scans all of the Samurai derivation paths that are known.
Nice.
And yeah, so it makes restore really a breeze. So that's why I recommend Electrum.
Cool.
There was a question from Decode about going into Whirlpool and there being a limit on the amount of UTXOs that can be created at TX0. Could you just expand upon why that is?
Yes, that's again, it's one, because it's a safeguard to prevent people from creating giant TX0 transactions that pay more in miner fees than they would pay if they went up to a larger pool. So we saw that really early with Whirlpool. We had a couple giant TX0 transactions where the miner was just getting paid a crazy amount versus what they're paying in the coordinator fee. So it's just to align incentives, basically. Hopefully it doesn't get in the way. We didn't set the limits to try to extract more revenue out of users or anything like that. It's solely a way to limit the damage that you could create a massive TX0 and overpaying miners fees. So the limit is, I believe, 77 or 80 TXOs created in a single TX0.
So I'm looking at my wallet right now, Samurai, and when I go to send a UTXO, I don't have the option for Stonewall. I don't know if I don't, and I have more UTXOs than the one I'm trying to send.
Right. So if you're trying to do an individual UTXO spend, so you've selected a specific UTXO that you want to spend, you won't be able to activate Stonewall for that spend because Stonewall needs access to other UTXOs.
So it'd be like if I wanted to say I have a bunch of 0.1 BTC UTXOs, if I wanted to send 0.25 or whatever, then it would work, right?
Right. So the general rule of thumb is that you need to be sending roughly half of what your total available balance is, but you also need to have more than one UTXO available. And an additional rule of Stonewall is none of those UTXOs can have been in a previous transaction together. So they're completely separate and independent. So if you have a bunch of 0.1 UTXOs, but they all have the same source transaction, they won't be eligible for Stonewall.
Okay.
Right. So Stonewall's really easy to trigger from Postmix because just naturally from Whirlpool you have a bunch of like-sized amount UTXOs that haven't been seen together in a previous transaction. They're all individual Whirlpool transactions. So you can easily create Stonewalls from Whirlpool. From the deposit section, the account zero section of the wallet, it's really dependent on your UTXO list, how many you have in there, and how diverse the UTXO sources are. It kind of, if you've used your wallet and you pretty regularly, you've spent, you've received, you've just done some normal natural usage, you'll get to a point where like it's like the cast iron skillet, like it gets seasoned, and you're able to make more Stonewalls easier. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That makes sense. Okay.
Sir, I mean, lady, I mean, okay, sorry.
Intern, that's how I identify myself.
As we discussed before, there is Comet, and you're working out with Comet, but there is also Firecaster, and you may not know or know that's the entire purpose of my question. What is your take on what is going on with Firecaster? Do you foresee maybe swapping Comet for Firecaster, or you're solid on rolling Comet?
Well, we're just. I think Comet's the only one with working code and that can work now. As you said, so that's why we went with Comet. That always, they have a prototype that is workable and usable, and we want to get this in front of users and in use as soon as possible. We don't want a science project. We don't want to wait around. But ultimately, no, we're not married to whatever protocol it is. Whatever protocol ultimately gets used is the one that needs to be focused on. So if Firecaster ends up being used in the long term, then I don't think that it would be a major development shift to support it in the future if that's how it goes. Because all the nitty gritty details, all the UX work, all the how it works from a user perspective, which is really the tough stuff when you're doing an implementation. That's all already been worked out, and we'll have working code for. So I think however it develops will be fine. Ultimately, we with any sort of swapping tool, you need liquidity. It's just like if you don't have liquidity there, then on either side, then it's going to be not a great tool. It's going to be kind of slow, and the experience isn't gonna work. So we'll very much be what liquidity is, and we think that our user base can provide a good amount of the Bitcoin liquidity. And we hope that on the Monero side, a wallet will implement to provide the Monero liquidity as well.
There's a question in the chat from at launch window, something I'm curious of as well. Just to play it through, if I was exchanging my Monero for Bitcoin, so I received Bitcoin, would that Bitcoin I received, would it be best for that to go back into CoinJoin, go back into Whirlpool?
I would say yes, because again, you're looking for forward-looking privacy. I expect that the majority of people will do that. Yeah, and that's what the smaller pools are going to be useful for as well.
Okay, cool.
That was me. A question. Could I ask a follow-up?
Yep, of course.
So if I receive Bitcoin on the other end of an atomic swap and then put it back into Whirlpool to CoinJoin again, don't I just end up with more docs exchange? So has there been any math done on like how much you actually reduce your docs exchange through this entire cycle and then going back into Whirlpool again?
you're right. You will always have a new docs exchange UTXO. The idea is to reduce the amount. So for a lot of us who our model is essentially all coins that are coming in get TX zeroed. Generally, they don't get combined. Sometimes they do, but there's a lot of TX zeros, and you end up with a large list of docs exchange. Swapping into Monero for the Bitcoin user on that end clears out that list. For the the Monero user who has Bitcoin now, they have a small UTX, so they may want to accumulate. I don't really know what their goal is with that amount of Bitcoin, but we're not talking really large amounts that we know with Whirlpool. But that accumulation can then be consolidated because and there's no linkage between those TX zeros because that's a whole different counterparty or multiple counterparties. So, it's not a solution per se to the docs exchange problem. It's just another tool. So I see it probably just being used in the way that it's currently that the current custodial swaps that users are doing today are being used.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. And one last question: have you read the CoinSwap implementation paper by Chris Belcher, and how does that differ from the Monero atomic swap?
So the CoinSwap, yeah, we reviewed it. So the CoinSwap paper from Belcher is essentially an atomic swap, but it's between Bitcoin only. So it's Bitcoin to Bitcoin. We don't see we definitely don't agree with Chris that it's a replacement for equal output coin join. It's an entirely different type of transaction. It doesn't create a stop point, right? It creates uncertainty, perhaps, if a lot of people are doing them. But in essence, it's just swapping Bitcoin with another person directly one-to-one. There's no implementation plan in Samurai other than potentially as a post mix spend tool. So the assumption being that you've already done a equal output coin join, you've done a Whirlpool, you have a virgin UTXO with no attributable history. Now that coin would be appropriate to act as a swappable coin, in my view. Right? There's no history with that coin, and you can now also swap it out with the user without it breaking that other heuristic if it obtains a high level of use, which is questionable already. So we're not super excited about it in terms of major privacy wins. We're exploring it as a potential post-mix transaction if I can figure out what the actual use case is, because I still haven't quite figured it out.
Yeah.
What the use case is.
In short, it doesn't make CoinJoin obsolete.
No, that was what was said, but I mean, I don't think he really believes that. It's an entirely different type of transaction. It's.
No, sorry, I didn't mean that it would make CoinJoin obsolete. I meant that it
not
would
you.
Make the Monero atomic swap obsolete.
No. I wasn't referring to you when I said that was the author of CoinJoin, Chris Belcher. Not you in your question.
At the end of the day, the only zero-link properly implemented CoinJoin is Samurai and BIP47. Anything else is just moot. And Chris Belcher and anybody else will pirate that they have fixed it or that they have something better or make the Monero atomic swap or Monero privacy obsolete just because they're maxis. They're closeted maxis and they just want to stay on Bitcoin only. And they don't want to admit that Samurai is the only one that is bringing Bitcoin for the streets and that is actually bringing actual actionable privacy to Bitcoin transparent blockchain. So it's just hideous behavior and
Yeah.
Toxie Maxi bullshit. That's what
Yeah,
it
well,
is.
it's definitely not a replacement for that. And again, I know that's not what you were saying, but that's what was said about. That's what was proposed about CoinSwap when it was launched. So I don't see that as a adequate tool. One of the benefits of swapping to Monero is that you're leaving the chain entirely, and you're entering into a chain which has a good track record of privacy at a default level. Now, there can be various arguments as to the longevity of such a chain and is this going to last and how can you audit it and this and that. And I don't know enough of the details. I haven't kept up on the development to argue those points one way or another. And like I was saying, it's not really my area of interest. What I do know is that this feature isn't designed for long-term storage on the Monero chain. It's really a round trip type of feature. The duration of the trip is being variable on a per user need, right? So I don't think any of those types of concerns really matter. There's a long history of it being private on chain, long enough for most people who are going to be using this feature to feel comfortable keeping their coins there before converting them back into Bitcoin and doing whatever they will with them, whether it be jumping into a new coin join again. And I would say that's what the best thing to do with it is. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on the matter there. Again, I'm not going to get into the communities of both. I think both are equally annoying. And we're not developing for them, obviously. We're developing for our users who are actively using the wallet, providing feedback, telling us how they're using it, and we're trying to just come up with ways that allow them to do what they're already doing, but do it in a way that keeps them self-sovereign. If we can do that, and if we can't do it, we won't do it. So that's basically it.
Okay, thanks for the response on that. That was helpful.
I just want to. It's Nindy. I just want to say thanks for your development on the. How are you? Thanks for your development on the wallet. I'm enjoying watching it change all the time. And also, I saw CoinShaw's tweet this morning. I think it was that he sent that a transaction via some Go tenors, 12.6 kilometers. Thought that was pretty cool. I wanted to say well done on that as well.
Yeah. Zelko's asked in the chat, how did the TX tenor start, and is there any potential future in the project at all?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So that goes back in history a little bit, where we started a kind of research group, a public research group called Mule Tools, which was all about censorship resistance in the broadcasting of transactions. So it was like about thinking about worst case scenario. You're unable to use the internet, public internet, to broadcast transactions. You're unable to use Tor for whatever reason. There's some sort of event and you need to be able to broadcast transactions. So we thought of all these different ways, some of which were, printing out QR codes for snail mail. We thought we did stuff with like sending open dimes mail. One of the ways that we experimented with, and I think it was Pavel from Resler, who initially created a proof of concept around SMS-based transaction broadcasting. We like that one because we're mobile anyway. So we decided to create a proof of concept app that would take a signed transaction and broadcast it via SMS, traditional old school SMS, which has its limitations in terms of character count per message sent. And I don't know if you've noticed, but some of our transactions are pretty beefy, so that could result in some pretty large transactions. So we came up with a way of compressing and encrypting the transaction and payload to make it, sendable over maybe 4 or 5 individual SMSs. And we built that into proof of concept app. Then we got introduced to the GoTenna people when we were visiting New York for something, and they gave us a couple GoTenna devices, and we built out the proof of concept to include the broadcast mechanism over mesh network, over the GoTenna mesh network, and that was then we decided in Samurai Wallet we had started flirting with the idea of an offline mode. And ultimately, the offline mode we want to be like a fully seamless offline mode. But in the meantime, we created a system where you could at least make a couple of transactions if you have to do ticks over in offline mode and be presented with a screen offering to broadcast your transaction in different ways. One of those ways was SMS, and the other way was mesh network. And that's pretty much the story of that functionality, that those proof of concept apps. Ultimately, yeah, we can see more of that stuff created, but what will probably happen more likely is that the offline mode will be further developed, and the functionality to broadcast through other means than the internet will be built into the app itself, as opposed to requiring a secondary app, like proof of concept app. That's most likely what's going to happen.
Instead, perhaps we should be asking Zelko when TX Tenor support in Ronin Dojo.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that the other day, because there, with the TX Tenor, if you want to do further enhanced stuff like, with the GoTenna, there's a server side component. I guess again a coordinator type component. That could be something that's hostable on Ronin to make a really powerful self-sovereign USB mesh network to relay server thing.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
I have maybe a follow-up question. Samurai Wallet used to have some functionality about like a feature to lock off from the system and being accessible only by some code or like telephone. I don't know. Never used it, but it was left out because of some Google policy, as far as I know. Is this coming back in some kind, or is it not?
We would like it to come back. Yes, if we can figure out a way to do it, we will in the future. What changed was not policy, actual Android code changed. So even if we didn't rely on Google, even if it was just Android open source projects, the core of Android changed. So we weren't able to use that functionality anymore. And I think that we will see those types of features coming back at some point. It's just that we have a full docket right now of new functionality that we want to bring to the table before we try to figure out exactly how the hell to do it on Android these days.
There's a question in the chat by United Fruit. You see this get asked quite a lot. I think there's a bit of confusion as to what Taproot can do for coin joins, but I'll ask it anyway. And that's with the introduction of Taproot. Can Taproot addresses be used as a sort of collaborative coin join with less on-chain footprint, or can Taproot benefit coin join in any way?
Taproot by itself, no. It kind of lays the foundation. What's required is signature aggregation, which did not make it. It was originally part of the Taproot upgrade, but then got separated out for reasons. Then So we need one more upgrade, and I don't think we're going to get it. I think other people are hopeful and positive that we will, but that's where we would start to see the benefit in on-chain coin-join transactions. But we're not there. We're nowhere near there. No. It's kind of a misnomer that Taproot solves, privacy. It solves a limited, subset of a privacy problem, mostly for Lightning Network and other L2 type of technologies, but not for on-chain coin-join transactions. There's no impact there, unfortunately. But fees are low anyway right now, and they don't, so take advantage of this low fee environment. They're not missing out on it.
And why do you think we won't get cross-input signature aggregation?
I think that I've been around for a long time now, and I'm old and bitter. And a pessimist based on just what I've seen. It's very difficult to get these things activated. I mean, look how difficult it was to get Taproot activated. They made a big song and dance. Like there was like a whole tribal infighting situation. There was, I don't know if anyone's subscribed to the Bitcoin devs mailing list, but it was weeks and weeks of the pain arguing back and forth over really nothing. They both parties wanted to activate Taproot, and they disagreed on the activation method. And we see this type of activity play out over long periods of time in Bitcoin. Now, Taproot wasn't controversial. I think SIGAG is going to be controversial. I think there's going to be a contingent of users who maybe have like a high profile who are against it. And I think there's going to be a contingent of users, like we would be one of those, that group who are lobbying for it. And I don't know that our group lobbying for it is going to have the weight and the power behind it. We'll see. But if the Taproot was not controversial, everyone wants it. And it was still kind of a uphill battle to get it activated and agreed upon. I mean, I'm not even talking about the miners. I'm talking about the developers. So yeah, we'll see. The miners is a whole other story. How it gets activated. Is it going to be smooth, or is it going to be another UASF situation? So there's all those questions. I'm not bullish on that. I don't think the priority at the core development level is on privacy, and I don't think enough of the vocal influencer types are focused on privacy. I think those guys are in the minority overall. So we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm too bearish on this, but I would like to be wrong. So I hope I get proven wrong.
That's a bit of a loaded question. I thought that'd be your answer.
Okay. I got a question about UX. I know that's a very dear topic of yours. When will the wallet get an explanation of UTXOs? You had mentioned it in Dirtcoin Diaries, and I think that'd be great.
You mean a explanation of what they are in the wallet?
Yeah, I think you had said something along the lines of thinking about including that.
Well, yeah, there's a whole education aspect that I want to focus on. A whole update that focuses on better educating the user, not only about core concepts to Bitcoin, but also the features and when to use them, and why you probably don't want to buy a beer with a ricochet, etc. That type of avoid making those mistakes. But ultimately, I think that with concepts like UTXOs, you have to build the UX in a way where they learn by using. You know, so you're not explicitly telling them in a text string, this is a UTXO. You can provide that, but ultimately people don't read anything, you know? So they have to actively use the UTXO in a way that it clicks in their mind that this is what makes up a Bitcoin wallet, right? And this UTXO, you know, this is actually the model. It's not a balance and some transactions. Now it's what I have here, this thing, and that could be done in a way that isn't just explanatory text. It's a rethinking of how Ascend is constructed, perhaps, or how we display. Do we display a transaction preview before a transaction goes out, showing exactly UTXO composition and how it's impacted and how enabling Stonewall changes it versus disabling it, that type of thing. So it's kind of an open question, but I think the broader answer is that education is important, and we're going to try to address that in future updates.
Yeah, in my opinion, you either have to like do a total abstraction and like ditch all the UTXO out from the user, which is not the way for Samurai Wallet, of course. And or there's the other way, and you have to reimagine like how the physical wallets work, because in your wallet, in your physical wallet, you have coins, and you have 20, 10, 5, and these denominations. So you have to like bring this kind of like thinking of physical wallet and reimagine it in the digital space, which is really hard to do in the like in mobile app.
Yeah, absolutely. It is difficult.
I think nobody has cracked this yet. I think if Samurai Wallet is going to crack this one, then it's going to be mind blowing, actually.
Yeah, no, I agree. It definitely has to be cracked yet. I originally early on tried to abstract the TXO model out. I tried that for a couple. I tried that for a couple versions before I just gave up on that. We're talking pretty early on, but we had a late start on the UTXO kind of management side of things. Like we've always, from the start, you can see your UTXO because you had the do not spend functionality. And at the time, this was really the only coin control you could get for most mobile wallets. This was it. Samurai Wallet Mark Do Not Spend. It was only later on that we started introducing more active coin control functionalities, the abilities to select multiple, to do a back spend with multiple input selected UTXO. All these kind of things came later, so it wasn't part of the fundamental experience at UI. It was jammed in. As the wallet evolves to be more towards 1.0 state, like I mentioned earlier, those things will become more progressively integrated from the start, and I think are going to be even more successful. But I mean, as it stands today, Samurai Wallet is the best wallet on mobile, definitely for coin control. I don't know of another wallet that's doing coin control like we are in the same way.
Another question from United Fruit: is it safe to mix other inputs with doxic change if the doxic change and the other inputs are from the same source?
So we're assuming it's a KYC source. So you have,
in this case, yes.
Right. So you have a KYC source at some exchange. You've had multiple UTXOs for them into your Samurai wallet. You have some doxic change from a previous whirlpool, and you have a new UTXO from that same KYC source. Yeah, you can mix those together. Because the issue with linking Docs Exchange to Whirlpool is you're linking sources. If the source is already linked, and it is, if it's KYC Exchange, then feel free to save on the miner fee and link those two in there.
Nice. Any other questions in the chat?
All right, I guess.
Been ripping for 2.5 hours. Cool, man. Well, thanks for the chat.
Yeah, thanks, Brother Rabbit. Thank you very much for all your work in the Telegram room lately. You've been a great help to all of our newer users and people who are confused. Thank you for hosting this for us.
I wouldn't say hosting, stumbling through, but it's been a pleasure.
No, you did great. I mean,
All right. Well, it's
all right.
it's 2:10 here in the morning, so I'm gonna hit the hay.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Take
Good
care.
night, all. Bye bye.